Watch this story, and it might break something in you. Or worse, Ava was a young, beautiful woman who stood by her man when his world was falling apart. She wiped his tears, reminded him he was enough. But when he healed, he said she reminded him of pain. This story cuts deeper than goodbye, so get ready to be teary. Ava was 29 when she met Daniel. She had just moved to Chicago, trading the soft pace of small-town life for the chaos of a city that never apologized for being cold, both in weather and in heart. She wasn't chasing love. She was rebuilding herself after a quiet heartbreak. New job, new apartment, new beginning. But the funny thing about life is, sometimes love finds you. When you're finally done looking, Daniel was 31, an engineer turned recluse. He'd been through something heavy. You could see it in his eyes, that hollow silence people carry after they've survived something they don't talk about. He didn't smile much, didn't flirt, didn't try. And maybe that's what drew Ava in, the fact that he wasn't performing. He was just there and hurting. It was at a small art gallery on a rainy Friday night. He stood staring at a painting, a faceless woman in a storm, and she stood beside him. Neither of them spoke for almost a full minute. Then he said, "I've felt like her for the last year, like I lost my shape trying to hold everything together." That's how it started. Not fireworks, not flirting, just honesty. Daniel had been through a lot. His mother passed away suddenly. He lost his job 2 months later, a layoff he didn't see coming. Then his long-term girlfriend left, saying she couldn't deal with someone who had no energy for life. And just like that, the world became too heavy for him to carry. He stopped talking to friends, stopped answering calls. Some days, he wouldn't even get out of bed. When Ava came into his life, he was still drowning. Not obviously, not dramatically, but slowly, the kind of drowning where you've already stopped kicking. Their connection grew over time. They started with long walks, then longer phone calls. He never said, "I'm depressed," but he didn't have to. Ava noticed the tiredness in his voice, the way he'd forget to eat, the way he avoided mirrors. She didn't try to fix him. She just stayed. And over the next few months, she became his anchor. 6 months later, they were officially together. She'd come over on Sundays to clean up his apartment, leave sticky notes on his fridge with little affirmations, sit through his silences without demanding words. Daniel started going to therapy again, started running twice a week, even built up the courage to apply for a remote role. Ava celebrated every little win. Because when someone is in the dark, even standing up is a victory. But the darkness, it wasn't gone. There were setbacks, random days when he'd shut down again, nights he couldn't sleep, mornings when he forgot how to smile. Through it all, Ava stayed. Not because she thought he owed her anything, but because when you love someone deeply, you hold their hand even when they don't feel like reaching for yours. Where are you watching from? Asterisk. Let me know in the comments. Because whether you're in Chicago like Ava or somewhere across the world, heartbreak is something we all recognize, even in someone else's story. Let's continue. By the 1-year mark, things started to change. Daniel was healing slowly, but steadily. He was back at work. He had new hobbies, started cooking again, even began mentoring new engineers online. And while Ava was proud of him, something inside her started to ache. Because with every step forward, he seemed to take a step away from her. The morning texts became less frequent, the calls shorter, the hugs less present. She brushed it off. "He's just adjusting," she told herself. "He needs space, I understand." But then came the skipped dinners, the forgotten plans, the tired excuses. And one day, he didn't show up to her birthday dinner, didn't call, didn't text, nothing. She waited that night, in a red dress, a cake on the table, candles flickering, and silence. The next morning, he came over like nothing happened. She didn't yell, didn't cry. She just asked, Are you still in this with me, Daniel? Or have you already left? He paused. Then he looked at her and said something that would stay with her for years. You were there for me when I was broken, and I'll never forget that. But now that I'm healing, I realize you remind me of the worst season of my life, and I don't want to live in that memory anymore. That was the moment Ava understood. He had healed, but his healing came at the cost of everything they'd built together. To move forward, he felt he had to let her go. She didn't beg, didn't argue. She nodded and quietly walked him to the door. That night, she cried for hours, not because he left, but because she stayed through everything only to be written out of the ending. The next few months were numb. She deleted his number, threw away the sticky notes she once wrote for him, started going to therapy not to fix herself, but to understand why being loyal sometimes leads to abandonment. It took time, but Ava slowly came back to herself. She started painting again, took weekend trips alone, even smiled at strangers in bookstores, something she hadn't done in over a year. She didn't hate him. She just missed the version of herself that still believed love could save someone. 18 months after her last meeting with Daniel, she received a message from him. I've been thinking about you a lot. I know I hurt you. I just wanted to say thank you. I wouldn't have made it through that year without you. You were the only one who stayed. I hope you're doing well. She stared at the message for a long time, then smiled, not out of joy, but clarity. And she didn't reply, because some messages are not meant to reopen wounds. They're meant to remind you how strong you were for surviving them. Some people will only love you when they're falling apart, not because you aren't worthy of their best, but because they only knew how to need, not how to give. And when they finally find peace, they associate you with the pain they're trying to leave behind. But that doesn't make your love any less powerful. It just means you were the bridge. And sometimes, people forget the bridge the moment they reach the other side. If you've ever held someone through their healing, only to be left out of their future, know this: you weren't foolish. You weren't too much. You were exactly what they needed, at a time they needed someone the most. And even if they forgot, the universe didn't. If this story hit home, type "I understand" in the comments. And tell me, is this why we see more gold diggers today? Because maybe love without return feels like a dangerous game now.